from where you come from.
Yeah, sort of try to look at what people wanted to.
Unique enough anyway, so you should work with
There are 3 from Sri Lanka.
You are 3 from Sri Lanka in the same group now.
No,
we
had
So the thing is, we brainstormed the things we thought we could work on, and then the idea was that we would divide the group depending on who was interested in what.
Okay,
But,
it was because the first year we had this course the first time last year, and there we didn't think of mixing, so it became like the Norwegian group, the French group, and Sri Lanka group, and the Spanish group. And it was so clear, like the Norwegians, they chose aquaculture. The French people, they chose water because they had a drought that summer, so that was, you could see what was affecting. In Sri Lanka, it was about food security and fish or something like that. So it was really clear. So it's also to get an understanding of each other and how different it is depending on where you come from. It would be really nice that one mixed a little bit up. But enough on that, because now I think we should begin. We have actually 2 lectures today. So we have one on cognitive mapping. Here comes Tamer. Hi. And then we have one on communication. Yeah.
Camera, but we can then just pass.
Yeah, and we have one on communication a little later. That is going to be, you didn't have anything to read for that, and that was by purpose. And then it's more for you maybe to be inspired and see that this communication task, that it's going to be something fun. You know, a fun way of working with your sustainability challenge and beginning to look at it. But we're going to be talking about cognitive mapping, and I think we should start with something here. So actually, I'm going to move over to the whiteboard. And I'm going to draw a fish. And I'm not good at drawing, so we have a fish. Happy fish. So if we should make a mind map of this fish, what would this fish eat? Can anybody come with something? Plankton? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is connected to this. Is there anything else it likes to eat?
Fish, other fish.
Fish, yeah. And now we take a new pen here because this one is already dead. Yeah. What does the plankton need actually to survive? Light, yeah. Yeah. Somebody coming in here. Hi. Come in, quickly join. Yeah. So we have the light.
Ask him to come. Tell him he's supposed to be.
Come inside.
This is a class.
We're making a mind map of a fish.
Can I just say something? Because we were at the lab and we're not quite done, so we might be called in a few minutes to finish.
Yeah, but that's
If
totally
okay?
that's
Yes,
totally
just so you
fine.
know, so we
Yeah.
don't interrupt. It's fine.
Okay. So, and where does this fish like to live? Does it like cold or warm water? Should we? Cold. It likes it cold. So, it's God, now I'm gonna temp. No, we write temp. We know this is temp here. Yeah, cold. What does it like otherwise? How does it like its habitat?
It like some places to hide in, for example, kelp forests.
Yeah, it can be kelp. Yeah. Yeah. So does anybody eat the fish?
Bird.
Bird?
No. Is it say that?
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
how about us? Is it connected to us humans as well in some way? Could it be something? Can anybody?
I like fish.
To eat?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is like a mind map of a fish. What is connected to a fish? It's a small one, but this is actually also, I would say, the first steps for a cognitive map. So what is a cognitive map? A cognitive map is how people understand the system in terms of content. So what exists in a system, its components, a little bit like the things, very simple way that we have done it there on the whiteboard, and the structure and function, and how these parts of the system arrange or how they interact with links and weights. And we'll come into this a little later. And it's also a graphical representation of people's knowledge, experiences, values, worldviews, interaction, and beliefs. And people, that can be you, me, researchers, stakeholders. It can be different actors. It can be many different types of people. So it's quite broad. And these understanding and also way of understanding the system is of course connected to one's norms and values, maybe job, tradition, culture, interactions with the system, if one's a fisherman or if one just loves to be there as leisure. It's connected to observation, but also spatial operations. And this is also why what you have learned in the past lectures about sustainability, ethics, values, worldviews, and relationships, they also come into this cognitive map, and is important to have in mind both when doing these maps, but also in connection with your sustainability challenge that you're going to be working with. And also, this results in that these diverse system understandings are resulted from different framings of system components, its functions, and dynamics. So how one understands these, and these might be different. I came with an example in a past lecture, also just a simple word as sustainability. What does that mean? And that might impact also such a cognitive map in many different ways. So a cognitive map represents important variables, as I mentioned, the stakeholders or researchers that they use to describe a system. So it can be ecological components, like cod, phytoplankton, or our little fish. And it can also be social components as fishery, tourism. Now we came food for us, which came into the system as well. But it can also be even more complex things as economics or political components, global demand, abiotic or biotic components as well. So it can actually become quite complex if we go into it. But I think we can just try and, keep it simple first, because this is like a cognitive map, which you can see here. So we have, as you did here with the mind map, we have different components and they're linked in different ways. One can then also add arrows to it to show that, like this yellow one, affects this. So we can say, okay, kelp is important for fish, and the fish here, but it can actually also go the other way because he eats it. Then one can actually also add, like, if it affects it negatively or positively. And in the end, one can actually put strength into it. So does it affect it very much, or is it affecting it little, or in a negative way, and put strength into it? And to make it even more simple, so if we have a component A, the influencing component, if A is increasing in ... what happens with B? And here Veronica came with a really good example. We had the kelp. So if we have a rise with sea urchins, how does it influence the kelp? Well, the number decreases. So it has, you can see the minus, a negative impact. Do you understand it? Is it difficult? No, I hope I put it down a little simple. So, cognitive mapping, this is a large text, of course, is a tool for developing a qualitative model of how given systems operate and are connected. So this can be with the plus and minus, as I said. And these can be just merely connected or impact each other. But it also really shows how this system approach, how things interact in a larger whole, and that it's actually a really dynamic system we're working with. And I'll come into that later on. And also cognitive mapping is a good tool for identifying and exploring stakeholder perspectives on a socio-ecological system, and emphasis on explicit topics to explore further. And you have been having about social ecological systems here in the past lectures, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I'm also going to be coming with a few examples in connection with this. Because when we talk about cognitive maps and also social ecological systems, it's really clear that everything is connected in many different ways. And that we also see with this one here, things would be connected if we began making more and more arrows around, and things would be impacting in different ways. So if we eat too much of this fish, the birds will have less to eat, and they will go down in numbers, and everything is connected in many different ways. And therefore, I will also come into some examples of some research that we have been doing here in the lab. The first example I can give you in connection with cognitive maps is in connection with Svalur, which is an interdisciplinary project where we've been working with understanding resilience of long-term environmental change in the Arctic. And here we have been combining environmental monitoring with knowledge and observations of people from all walks of life, we call it. So people interacting with environments in different ways. And here we did both interviews, and then we also did PPGIS. So that is online, where people online put down observations on a map. And this actually resulted in this cognitive map. And this is normal people who have put on how they connect things. And you can see when you gather knowledge, people have a really incredible understanding of how the system is connected, how landscapes is connected to snow and ice, or how the animals are connected to changes in landscapes, sediments, tundra vegetation, became pretty complex. And here there's an example from Svalbard. First here you can see the Maptionnaire, and people, they made observations all over Svalbard. And that's also quite incredible that normal people, they move so far around on this island that is snow and ice. And it also shows that people who live there likes to be outdoors. And here we took out a section here just to show how, like with reindeer, so how land and landscapes impact reindeer. And then ice during winter impacts the reindeer negatively. The reindeer is quite important for the Arctic fox, and when there are many reindeer, there is also a lot of foxes because they have a lot to eat. But also then if there's a lot of foxes, it then impacts the geese because they also prey on the geese. The geese then also impact the greening of the Arctic or of the vegetation on Svalbard because of all the, what's it called, the feces that is they come out with. But also erosion impacts also where the geese, they settle, so they then start to be in certain areas where there's no land erosion. So you can see there are all these different ways on how landscape, animals, weather, ice and snow, and then also like human impacts in connection with pollution and litter impact the system. And this is what you see with a cognitive map. And even though it looks a little complex, one can think this is a type of mind map. Another example can be here also from Svalur, where people have been mapping things such as ocean and sea, ice and snow. And here we have, on this part here, we have all the tracks that people move around in winter time. So this is GPS from, what's it called, from snowmobiles. And then these are different observations that they have in different areas. You can see in winter time they also move pretty far away. This is glacier this you don't have to look at. This is what is happening of monitoring right now scientifically. But here one then can see, you know, that all these things like glaciers retreating, shorter ice periods, melts water, more snow is impacting negatively, which is the stapled lines, the mobility, so how people move around, but also like these different weather events, which are also impacting. And these are actually also connected with higher avalanche risk, landslide, permafrost, and such things. And there one can see how these connect together and impact. So the cognitive mapping also contributes with an inductive analysis, and I'll come into what that is. And clusters of connections, like this cluster here, we can see all these connections coming into one thing. Identifies areas of need in regards to, in this case, monitoring or research. It can also be maybe it can be something in connection with management if it was another project as well. And in the case of Svalur, they found out it identified, like in connection with land and landscape, these clusters show that people thought that it was really important that we get more monitoring in connection with safety. This is local people. We feel unsafe when we move around in the landscapes. The environments are changing, the snow is changing, and before we could predict, but we cannot do that anymore. Or the landslides as well, and permafrost and wetting, and also erosions, and people experience landslides when they're out hiking. So this is what they were talking a lot about. And then also microclimates, that there's not enough, the predictions of weather is not that good. And because there's coming these extreme weather events, it's important that we know how the weather is going to be, but also in connection with microclimates. And also with snow and ice, again, safety monitoring was a big cluster again because of crevasses, avalanches, glaciers, and also the unstable sea ice, which hasn't been that in the past, but today it's getting more and more difficult to move, that one cannot always follow the GPS tracks from others as one could in the past, but now it's very different. And then also in connection with animals, people are talking about like reindeer populations, that they're quite high in some areas, that maybe it's something that researchers should look into, but they are looking into that. But here the communication part comes in, that they're not making their research available to people, so they don't know that this is happening. And also something about walrus, that there's coming more walruses in old howling areas. And then also in the geese, the amount of geese. So this is an example how a cognitive map and those clusters with arrows have contributed to what is important and what people see as important for future research. Another example can be from Green Feedback, and that's a project where we want to enhance the knowledge of greenhouse gas dynamics within humans and environmental systems. And here we have been working and looking at kelp in relation to blue carbon and biodiversity. And there we work with, we have been interviewing together with a PhD student, different fishermen on the island of Andøya, their knowledge about biodiversity, kelp, and pressures. And this actually came out to be this cognitive map here, which also is also incredible. And it wasn't even only fishermen, it was also different knowledge holders. And here we had elements of the environment, knowledge. These are the different areas that they fish and how they're connected, different technologies and ways that they do fishing. And then things that are coming from outside, such as it can be foreign investment, conservation, marine protected areas, oil industry, military and space, which was mentioned quite a lot. So it becomes such a system here. And here, actually, we could move it to this. And this is a social ecological system. I don't know, is this one that Vera showed you also last time or one of these? Have you seen it a little? They're like different versions of it. But this is a version of a social ecological system where we have like the ecosystem, the structure and function, which is impacts the ecosystem services, so the provisioning, the regulating, and the cultural aspect. So how it produces this, and this supports, of course, the human systems, so individual, groups, institutions, and then once again impacting human activities, which can be fishing, aquaculture, etc., etc. And you can see these are all connected, and if one of these changes, if the ecosystem changes, if a species is taken out, it might, change the whole system totally. And then here we have then stressors coming from the outside. So here we have like stressors such as impacting the environment, being like climate change, invasive species, pollution. And also in connection with the human systems, we have stressors such as markets, globalization, technology. And when these, of course, come from the inside, they change the whole system. So that's a social ecological system in short. And this is also, one could put this a little bit inside the cognitive map. So here we have the ecosystem, the structure function. We also have it here. I moved them a little apart, and actually I don't know why. That is something I thought after I put this into the PowerPoint. Then we have the human system and human activities here. Here we could also have the technology, which is changing, which could be the exogenous stressors. We have the ecosystem services, what it provides with. And then here we have these stressors coming from the side, market, globalization, and technology. And here, these arrows, then you can also see how these actually are impacting each other in different ways. So actually, I thought this became quite, here we also have human activities. So, and of some of the large things, when one sees something, usually we say that if we talk about kelp and what impacts kelp, and also the carbon which is stored on the seabed, people are saying that, or in papers and such things, people are saying that trawlers is one of the doing the biggest impacts. But what was quite interesting when talking with local people, they were talking about seine fishing, so survåt. Do you know that, Michaela, the English word, real? Survåt. It's a net. In old days, it was made in Denmark for shallower waters where the net should go more in the surface. Snurrevad, yeah.
Snurrevad,
Yeah.
per se.
Yeah, and it has become more heavy, so now it's also many places it's scraping the bottom, so it actually has the same impact as trolling. But because we don't see it as trolling, it is not seen as a pressure. So this was also helped to identify, and if I had been a good teacher, I can press on this, so I had just identified what is connected to this, and then you could have seen what they were saying, and I forgot that, I'm sorry. I'll do that next time, but it has actually quite large impacts. Another impact which was pretty interesting and connecting to all these different lines is actually military and sound pollution, and is connected to, first of all, the fisheries, that they cannot fish. It's connected to juvenile spawning areas, scaring fish away for a long period. It's connected to many different things, and that is also very nice when one makes these cognitive maps, that sometimes one sees something, a cluster that one actually had not thought of, and we were quite surprised that this actually had such a large impact, or that the people said that this had such a large impact. So that is quite interesting with these cognitive maps, or mind maps, we can call it.
Have you seen this paper recently? I think it's Nina Mikkelsen who is the first author on it, where they had different interest groups kind of showing how the the maps are diverging depending on your interests.
Of course, and that
Yes.
is also what I say.
Yeah.
That it,
But it was a very nice visual.
Yeah.
How I can see if I find it for you.
yeah, that would be interesting. So, the cognitive map, as I mentioned earlier, it contributes as an inductive analysis. And what I mean with that is when you look at this map, as you with all these bubbles, is that it gives a bird eyes view on the data, the variables, and which of course then moves from being like an individual bubble, as we have here, to a more general set of propositions, because one sees these different connections, and therefore also can give a new understanding to the data one sees by this visual and bird eye view. But it can also contribute to identify patterns. So now we had these clusters of arrows on different areas, and then you can see, oh, this is a pattern. There is some connection here. But and to help form new theories, now I mentioned the things with the type of fishing and also the military. It can also have something biological as well. It can also contribute with new hypotheses and identification of monitoring needs. And here, of course, we have the example from Svalbard that this cognitive map and the clusters was showing as well. And if we just try and go through, look at this again, this cognitive map here. Now we had the different systems and how they are connected. There was some things that actually was missing here. And one of the things that it was, which I thought was quite interesting, was actually we have the ecosystem structure and function, we have the human activities and human systems, and we have the exogenous stressors. But actually what people were not mentioning quite a lot was actually the ecosystem services. And you know what ecosystem services are, don't you? Yeah. And that is something that people don't think of, that it's a thing. And I think that is quite important. And another thing that actually many people were missing was, which I think is really important also when we talk about climate mitigation, sustainability challenges, because nature has actually, many times it has the solution. That was climate regulating services. People didn't at all mention this. And do you know what that is? Do you know what climate regulating services is? No? So it's a regulating service or an ecosystem service that regulates or is related to like atmospherical chemical compositions. So it can be greenhouse gas effects, it can be the ozone layer, precipitation, air quality, the moderation of temperature, weather. So all this system is a service that in the environment contributes to us. And I think it's a problem. And one of the things is also because there are many researchers who doesn't really know what this is and is very bad to communicate this. And if we don't make people aware of this, they don't see it in their system. And then if they don't see it in a system, we cannot use it as a tool for our sustainability challenge to get a sustainable solution. So the cognitive map is also contributes with, of course, telling us all the fantastic things that people know and how they connect with everything, but it is also good to tell us what people don't know and what they do not see. So in that way, it's also a very important tool. So, yeah.
I just want to give a short example because I know Claire Armstrong, she's a resource economist, and she was working in a new project on these ecosystem services.
Yeah.
And they did all the interviews about how important is coral reefs. And the coral reefs hardly came up on the maps at all. And then there was this information campaign, and suddenly everybody put coral reefs up
Mhm.
into the connected map. So kind of the knowledge in the public domain is of course of huge importance,
Yeah.
no matter what topics, and especially in the sustainability context. So
Yeah, but
Just
also
want to give an
because we're
example.
talking about climate change, climate mitigation, all these things, and we need to give people a resource to mitigate with, and that we don't do if they don't know and are informed of these ways of doing it. Yeah. So, I would say why it's important to have like an cognitive map like approach, and also why you're going to be working with this in connection with your sustainability challenge to try and make a cognitive map. It's because it's of course useful first understand the complex and interlinked dynamics of the relationships, but also in connection with societal change and challenges. And here I really want also, when you're going to be doing your cognitive map, because you're going to be doing it the next hour after the break, is to look at your challenge, put it down in the bubble with the fish instead of the fish, and then if you think of it you're going to think about it like, so if we have this fish, okay, how is it connected to maybe the environment? How is it connected to the human aspect? Think about it as a social ecological system. And then try and make these interlinkages. And also think, how do maybe different people think about this? So if you are the government, how would you think about this? Or if you are a child, or yeah. So I think that would be really nice for you to get this overview, but also use this as a tool. And the reason why we're also giving you this as a resource is also many times when one works with sustainability sciences and also with interviews or workshops, one always gets qualitative data. And qualitative data is difficult to put into numbers. And this is a very good way and a very good approach to make it more applicable and be able to use it as a type of data source. Because you get all these flying around, these quotes here and there, and instead you take the quotes and the things that people have shared and put it into the system and can see the connections in that way. Therefore, it's quite a really, really good approach. So what you're going to be doing, and the reason I'm going to be here with you after the break, and then I want you to go in. You're going to go into Kumo.io, and there you can get like a free account, and then I would like you to go into each of your groups. I don't know if the PhD students, but
they
they're
do
gonna
their
get-
own, because they
they do
use
their
this
own.
to prepare for their paper,
Super.
their essay. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Or if they provide a common essay, then they have a common content.
Super, because then I would like to use time with you and sit down with you, and then we can but I would say maybe the first exercise is maybe to take a piece of paper, an A3, and then make a mind map, and after that put it into this electronical version after. But I will be here until the end of class and be helping you out. And then we can also discuss. It's also a good way to get an understanding of the challenge, how to set it up and what is affecting it. Maybe and also what the focus should be. It can change after you make this mind map. Did you understand? Are you lost? Did I make it complicated? Or is it okay? Yeah? So what I propose is you take like a 10 minutes break. I go down, take, how many were you groups? Should I take a few A4 or A3 papers? And then we begin. And then I sit with group 1 first. And then we can look through your challenge, and then I'll go back over to group 3 or 2. Yeah?
When you start with your mind map, do you start with the research question or do you start? It's kind of, yeah. What is kind of the starting point in a way?
Well, it can be like if we say last year it was about water,
Mhm.
you know? So, water. And then they began, okay, what is connected to water? And that could be, of course, rain contributes with water, blah, blah, blah. And then, but what are the stressors coming from outside? That was, of course, climate change, higher temperatures. But then it could also, one of them was with Coca-Cola,
Mhm.
that uses a lot of water in South or Middle America. What's it? South America, I'll say
Yeah.
then. Yeah, so that was a huge impact for the community. So there was no water there, you know. So if we take this and see, yeah, what is impacting this system? How is it connected? Yeah, so that can be a starting point. Yeah. All good? Any questions?
The biggest challenge is that we are not done with forming the group and then finally.
Okay, I thought you were
which
supposed
challenge
to be finished with that.
Yeah, you can do it quick. While you are fetching the A3s, they will have done it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Have you, but the ones that are forming, like, have you thought of some ideas of the different challenges, or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
three
that's a big
topics.
story.
So what challenges have you been thinking about until now?
We have a series of challenges. I think the one were most recurring, at least where we discussed on Teams, were the Arctic Center proposed on Kvaløya, the management of whale watching, and then some coral reef management issues. Yeah, but
So then you have 3 topics.
Yeah, but we haven't decided which one yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But you have 3 topics to choose of. Is there any topic that wasn't discussed that you would like to have on the table? That wasn't listed now.
I've actually listed a few. It's in the Teams.
Yeah, suggest them now
Yeah.
here.
when
Is there a topic that you would like to work on that wasn't mentioned now?
What did you mention of
Yeah, I
topics?
forgot what I mentioned. I wrote down a few topics.
Yeah.
It's in the Teams file, so I need to see what I actually wrote down.
Okay, so you have whale
yeah, we
watching.
have the list of like about 15 possible ones. So
Yeah. But you don't want more than 3 because you want to
Yeah.
be 3 in each group,
yeah, but
I think
more or less.
you were
Three in each
7 master.
yeah.
So
2
you're
or
gonna
3 in
people-
each group. Yeah, a group is more than 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
Vera said she wanted us to be more than 2, so
Oh,
that we're
okay.
going to be
Two
3 and 4.
Yeah, we're gonna
3 and 4. So only 2 topics are in then.
Yeah.
So we do a vote. Okay. May I do this?
No, but maybe he should just come with the examples.
The
that he
final
was-
example, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you only have 3.
The Arctic Center, you mean the ski center on Ringvassøya?
Oh,
Yeah.
Kvaløya.
Or isn't it Ringvass? Oh, that's the one in, in Hokkøybotn
Mm.
area. Okay.
Coral reefs.
Coral reefs.
And the last, the
Whale
second one
watching.
was whale watching, management.
Yeah.
There was something with wind farms and seabird design and fishing.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we have a
I
long
just
list
I
of
just
these.
put the